What's up, everybody? Welcome to Josh Allen season. Yay! That's right. We're going to go out. We're going to pick up Josh Allen off the waiver wire this week. Now, let's be perfectly honest. Even if you don't think you need a quarterback, it's not a bad idea if you have some room on your bench just to carry a second guy, just in case. I have Lamar Jackson. I'm going to go out there and try to add Josh Allen this week because it is setting up to be far too good for him. He has scored 18 or more fantasy points in 9 of 11 games since he returned from injury. What was it, last year? Mid-season last year? He's incredible. And you got to look at the schedule. He's got the Dolphins twice. He's got the Washington Football Club. He's got the Browns. Who else? He's got Philadelphia. There's a cheat code in the NFL. Play your offensive superstars against the Falcons and the Eagles, and he's got 3 of the most delightful matchups. Of course, the Dolphins, as I mentioned, and those so good. And Josh Allen, what he does is he runs the ball effectively and does all that stuff, and he's not terrible as a passer. He can throw the ball down the field, but he does give you the safest floor possible with running the football, kind of like what we see out of Lamar Jackson. I'm not saying he's going to go out and rush for 150 yards each and every week, but there is a good possibility that he's, again, going to give you that safe floor of at least 18 fantasy points, which is what we want. And if you're streaming quarterbacks at this point, that's what you do. It is kind of the reason, though, and I know this is a longer conversation for some time in the offseason about how we deal with fantasy quarterbacks, because it is a little bit tougher when you have the 4 points for touchdown passes, when you aren't giving passing bonuses. It does take a little bit of the shine away and does favor players like Josh Allen, but listen, that's the rules. That's what I'm going to go with right now, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Daniel Jones has got a good matchup this week. Anybody who's dropped him, he's going up against the Arizona Cardinals. They'll play with a lot of pace. They're going to be outdoors there in MetLife Stadium. So don't be dissuaded by what we saw on Thursday night. He went up against one of the best defenses in the league, so I would not discount Daniel Dimes and what he's been able to do this season. Again, Josh Allen, number 1. Don't mind picking up Daniel Dimes if he's going to sit there, and if you're going to need to stream a quarterback, I guess is my point. Also, Gardner Minshew, he might get rage dropped this week, and that is one of the things that I want a lot of you to know is that as important as it is to work the waiver wire on a Tuesday morning, it is equally as important to go out on Wednesday and see and look at the players who were dropped. Because every time we add a player, you have to drop somebody. That's basically the way it goes. Sometimes people get frustrated. Somebody might have dropped Evan Ingram last week. Somebody might have dropped, these valuable players. Obviously, Saquon Barkley's a little bit too high of an example, but you look at it, DJ Chark was available a couple of weeks ago in the league. Terry McLaurin might have been available. Just always take an opportunity, especially on Wednesday morning, if possible, because you don't want to miss that secondary waivers. And it's also a good idea on Friday as well, just to see if anybody is slipping through the radar. You want to make sure that, you're just keeping your eyes out for it. And if somebody was upset with what Gardner Minshew did this week, I would go out and pick him up because I feel like he's going to be a valuable fantasy starter in the coming weeks. And speaking of which, let's talk a little bit about Cam Newton. He's going to be able to return to practice when the team returns from their bye in Week 8. Now, obviously, Carolina is going to have a little bit of a difficult decision to make. What are they going to do with Kyle Allen, who has played so well for them? He is 5-0. He is one of the few modern era quarterbacks who has won their first 5 starts. I know, I think Kurt Warner's one of those. There's a lot of Hall of Famers that you look at and you're like, wow, that's an impressive list. And then Mark Bolger you're like, oh, and then Mark Bolger, of course. But there's a lot of impressive people. He joins those as the only quarterbacks in the NFL modern era to win their first 5 consecutive starts. So it'll be interesting to see what Riverboat Ron does. And I'm going to assume, or at least plan on Cam Newton returning. He returns in Week 8, which is the exact same time that Lamar Jackson and Dak Prescott are going to be going on a bye. So if you are somebody who has Jackson or Prescott, you're going to want to go out and you're going to want to add guys like Josh Allen, obviously. But Cam Newton has likely been dropped in a lot of leagues. You want to take this opportunity to go out and see if you can add him to your team, because if he starts in Week 8, and if he's healthy and ready to go, he's a good quarterback. Don't let the injured Cam dissuade you from how good regular Cam can be. And he's going to be amazing next year as the quarterback of the Washington FC. I'm calling it now. That is me calling my shot. Cam Newton will eventually, because that seems like such a Daniel Snyder thing to do, is like, hey, our quarterbacks are terrible. Let's get Cam Newton. He's a big name. We'll sell a lot of jerseys. Well, you could change the name and whatever. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. Another player I want you to look at who might have been dropped in recent weeks, Devin Singletary. He looks like he's getting closer and closer to returning for the Buffalo Bills. And of course, when he was the starter in week 1, he was the guy that they were relying on. Frank Gore's been a nice story, and it's fun to see him, and it's fun to see Adrian Peterson, much like it's fun to go out and see Candlebox and Smash Mouth playing free shows on Fremont Street during the summer in Las Vegas. But at some point, you're like, this is good. But now that I've seen Walking on the Sun, I'm ready to bounce. And that's how I feel about Adrian Peterson this week. Yeah, awesome against the Dolphins, and he went out and played really well. Actually, we had him for 130 and a touch, and he had like 138 and a touch. Listen, I know I get S wrong, but let me sit here and celebrate a moment. The 49er fans are going to be coming in and be like, well, you said 3 and 13. Yeah, exactly. There's another video you can go watch. I admit that I was wrong on that one. I will say one thing about the 49ers. At some point, you have to stop saying, well, who have they played? And I understand the Rams have their issues, but it's like, we're not going to get to week 14 and be like, who have they played? Like, yes, they're playing the teams that are on their schedule and they're beating them. And you have to give them credit. And anybody who's dug in their heels now, and I mean, I do is, because like Richard Sherman doesn't want me to come around on that, but it's like, recognize that's a pretty good football team. By the way, we'll talk about that later. Anyways, Mark Walton, they're going to be looking at a lot of running back. Oh, we're already moving to the running back. Oh, yeah, I was talking about Singletary. We're not picking up Adrian Peterson. We're not starting him against the San Francisco 49ers. Mark Walton's an interesting one because the Dolphins are in full-blown evaluation mode. They're trying to figure out who is going to be on the team next year. It's kind of like, I don't want to make it's too similar to what the Seahawks did when Pete Carroll took over, but they're kind of going through a house cleaning right now. So that means if Mark Walton, he's probably going to be available to you. And it's gross to start a Miami Dolphins offensive starter. I know a lot of people were on Preston Williams last week. I had him on a couple of rosters. Didn't start him. I started Terry McLaurin, thank God, over him. But it's gross to see a Miami Dolphin in your lineup. I know that Curtis Axel is a huge fantasy football enthusiast, and I was talking to him, and we were going back and forth between Preston Williams. I'm sorry that I'm name dropping here. Not enough to keep me from doing it, obviously. But we were talking about, if you're looking at Preston Williams or a guy like Chase Edmunds, and you're like, well, it's just gross to start a Dolphin, whereas at least the Cardinals have a competent offense that is going to go out and put out a lot of points. And obviously, Chase Edmunds did get into the end zone. It's going to be tough to trust him each and every week because the one thing is that he's not going to be playing a lot of the snaps, but he does have some flex appeal when in weeks where there's a good matchup. And the Giants are an okay matchup this week, but there's also going to be, but at least he's on a good offense. I think collecting players like that who are on good offenses is still a pretty good practice moving forward, which is also why you need to make sure that Latavius Murray is rostered on your team, especially if you have Alvin Kamara. Now, my friend Mark DiPaolo has Alvin Kamara, and I'm like, bro, give me the receiver you're not starting, and I will give you your handcuff. And he would not make that trade. Now, the receiver I was asking for was Terry McLaurin, but still, you weren't starting him. I had your handcuff. Why couldn't I use him? But wisely, he's going to go on and do that thing, and thankfully, he won his matchup. We also have, I know there was something like Jerron Brown was somebody who kind of popped this week. Russell Wilson threw a pair of touchdown passes to him. I'm not getting into that. We're not going to go in the Jerron Brown business. Darryl Henderson of the LA Rams, he looked like the best running back on Sunday. It was hard to get a clear evaluation because the 49ers were just playing so well, and they'd really stuffed the run. And the Rams have some issues on the offensive line, but there's going to be better matchups for the Rams coming up. And if Todd Gurley starts to miss extended periods of time, it wouldn't surprise me if Darryl Henderson ends up being the running back who ends up popping there. Now, I know a lot of people, Auden Tate is a pretty good option this week. He keeps going and crushing it with A.J. Green out, with John Ross out. And Zach Taylor has been pretty evasive about what he's going to do with A.J. Green. Now, there's talks that they're not going to trade him. I don't believe that at all. I would love to see A.J. Green get an opportunity to play with the New England Patriots and kind of go out the proper way, which he deserves. I think he's deserved that as one of the best receivers of his generation, but, that's neither here nor there. Auden Tate has been playing very well. If he's available on your waiver wire and you have an extra spot, you have somebody you're willing to drop, go ahead and make that move. Now, we do need to talk about the Jets. Oh my God, I forgot about this. The Jets are all in play. Sam Darnold, pick him up. Jamison Crowder, pick him up. Robbie Anderson, pick him up. And this is going to, I don't even need to expand on that. This is going to lead us into the Chris Herndon conversation because he's returning. And now we've got an interesting plot development because as we lose our Lord and Savior, Will Dissly, we now can look at a guy like Chris Herndon, who we've been waiting on for a couple of weeks. It wasn't good. He was suspended. He had an injury. But when he returns, he's going to be coming to an offense that is playing pretty well. It's amazing. I don't know if Sam Darnold is the MVP of the league or not. Perhaps he should be. But he looks pretty good. And again, you might have to wear it for a couple of weeks until Chris Herndon gets up to speed. But that is somebody that you're probably going to be able to rely on for the rest of the season once he returns and he's fully healthy. Again, I would put in a waiver claim for him. I like Noah Fant. Although he's suffering the ups and downs of being a rookie tight end. It's like, hey, Joe Flacco, what gives? Like, you're the guy who always throws the ball to tight ends. What is it about going to Denver that all of a sudden you're not the tight end guy? You're like, hey, I'm a new, like you transferred to a new school so you can try to redo your persona. Like you're Sandy from Greece or whatever. I don't know. You're AC Slater. You're showing up. You're like, hey, I'm a cool guy now. I wasn't before. I was a dork. I was an army brat, whatever. Was AC Slater's dad in the army? That's correct, isn't it? Anyway, you're going to want to look there. Who are the other tight ends are gross. Gerald Everett, you know what? People might rage drop Gerald Everett this week. But you know what? I honestly believe he's going to continue to be a big part of that offense. Darren Fells is somebody to look at, although he was a guy who went to Fullerton High. Didn't go to Cal State Fullerton. Went down to UC Irvine. So you know what? There are some things I can never forget. What about, was it Gerald Atkins? I mean, it's gross. It's a gross situation. Luke Wilson, nope. 2 L's. Those are double losses. You don't want to get into that business either. Jason Witten has actually been playing pretty well this year, too. He has 2 touchdowns. 2 touchdowns in the first 2 games. I don't know. He might slow down at some point, but also worth looking for in your deeper or even your shallower leagues because the talent pool for the tight end position is nil. And of course, obviously, I think it goes without saying, Hunter Henry should be added to your team. So I don't know if I'm breaking any ground right there telling you Hunter Henry needs to be added. But anyways, those are your waiver wire picks. Gosh, we went a little bit longer than I would have liked, but thank you so much for checking it out. We'll be back later this week. Check out the Adam Rank podcast wherever you can find podcasts, Apple Pods, Google Play, Stitcher, iHeartRadio app. Check out NFL Fantasy League 1 on the all-new NFL Fantasy app. And of course, you can find me at 95.5 KLOS, Southern California's home of original rock, classic rock, whatever. I always get that wrong. Anyways, thanks so much for joining me. Good luck this week.